All right. So there's a question, I think. Hold on. My seat's a little low. It's low, y'all. Ah. Okay. All right. So there's a question I think we all need to be asking ourselves. Why are so many teachers leaving the teaching profession? And not just that, we already know about the teacher shortage. But not only that, but they are homeschooling their kids. Okay? What do teachers know that you don't know? Right? And also, we have to beg the question, if educators who have experienced the system firsthand don't want their own children going to public school, exactly what do you think the likelihood of your own kids are to succeed in that set system? All right, we're going to be talking about that today. I am an educator, and I have 5 disturbing realities that I have a problem with personally that drove me, problems with the public school system that drove me to homeschool my kids. Okay, so we're going to get into that. So let's go ahead and get on to it. Okay, so number 1, there is a lack of foundation of truth in the public school system. Now, of course, I'm not expecting the public school system to teach my kids biblical principles, but I feel as a Christian, that's one of the most important things I can teach my children is the character of God, who Jesus is, and how to walk as his disciple. So to me, when I was in the school system, there was just way too many things that would affect my child, right? Or that would make it difficult to my child to maybe I instill some things into him, biblical principles, morals, etc. He goes into the school system, and then I have to re-educate him or re-teach him things because he's basically half the time he's with the school system, half the time he's with me, and he's not, it's kind of like a battle, I'm not gonna say a battle of good and evil, but it's like a battle of what you want your child to know. And then they go to a school system, they learn these other traits, these indoctrinations and other influences that you as a family don't value, but the world does. And you kind of have this tug and pull with your child. Now, I see this firsthand also with Christians in church who's, they're like, oh, they're doing so well, and then they went to public school and all of a sudden they're not interested, right? A lot of that comes from influence, okay? Influence of, it could be teachers, it could be their peers, it could be so many different things. So for me, I just felt that homeschooling would just be the best option for my child not my child, I have 2 children, 1 on the way. But for my children, simply because I don't want those views to be distorted by any means necessary. And we're talking about eternity here, okay? We're talking about, my faith is true. My faith is solid. So for me, I feel like teaching my kids the morals, teaching my kids what the Bible says, looking at the world through a biblical view is way more important than curriculum, to me, right? And as far as long term, because I think a lot of people forget too that as they walk through life, as your children grow up, whatever you instill in them, whatever their foundation, whatever foundation their feet are on, that's exactly what they're going to be able to live their life with, right? So simply put, what is that scripture? So the scripture says, I think I'm gonna pull it up, but it says, teach a child in the way he should go, and then in his ways he will not depart from it. So if your child has a rocky foundation, you're teaching them something and somebody else teaches them something else, you might not even be aware of what they're teaching them, right? So then when life hits them, they don't know who to turn to. They're like, I don't know if my parents are lying to me. I don't know this. So I just felt like it would just be a lot easier. It'd be a lot simpler. And they will have the freedom to pray. They have the freedom to read their Bibles. They have the freedom to worship at any point during the day. Of course, it's already instilled into our homeschool routine already, but it's just going to give them a better outlook overall. And it just sets them up for success in having the foundations of those biblical principles. And also just looking back, also, like I said, this is one thing that disturbed me myself, is that even as a teacher, I felt kind of off because you're in a public school system, so you don't want to do anything. You don't want to pray. You know what I'm saying? Someone see you praying, you know what I'm saying? Or someone sees you reading your Bible, and you're like, oh, what you trying to do? You trying to indoctrinate? You know how some people are. So it's just like, I felt like I was walking on eggshells and couldn't really be. Now, if the child brought up faith, like, oh, what, can I pray before my test or something? I'd be like, yeah, sure. Or whatever the case may be. Did I pray for my class? I sure did. Right? But it's like, there's a way you have to go about it, you know, just to make sure that you are adhering to the policies and the rules within the school system. So, and you already know they got rid of, you know, prayer in school and Bible in school and all that stuff. So it's a whole different thing. So for me, that was number one. Right? My children understanding the foundations of biblical principles, who God is, He's the creator, He loves them, etc. Right? And not, you know, trying to kind of battle between two different ideologies or philosophies, or multiple ideologies and philosophies from who knows who, right? So that was number one. Number two. Okay, I know that was a whole mouthful. But another disturbing reality is, for me, is the lack of personalized attention. Okay. I was actually a third grade teacher for majority of my career. I taught in public school system for, I guess as a licensed teacher for 6 years, but I was in the public school system for about 8, and I've been educating children for about 10 years for like tutoring and things like that. So I have over 10 years of education experience. Now, I've noticed that when you have a set amount of kids, especially when you're K through second, you're talking about you have 20 to 25 students, you know, and then third grade, you might get up to, I think the cutoff is like 25 as well. So let's say K to third, you have 25 kids. All right. And then all of a sudden, but most likely what will happen is you will have 5 to 6 kids that are EC identified, or they're a little behind in some way, right? Or they're a little behind in reading. They're a little behind by 1 grade level or 2 grade levels. So that's 1/3 of your class. Then you have the middle of your class, the middle of the pack. That's probably the most amount of students you have. Those are those average students, those students that are kind of going at the pace you're going for the year. And then you have, of course, those higher kids, right? So those advanced kids, or the AIG kids, etc. Honestly, because of the time and because of testing and the prerequisites and the standards that we have to abide by as teachers for the state and for our county, and the competitiveness for bonuses, stipends, whatever. Yeah, that's another topic. We'll probably talk about that in a different video. Our focus for the most part is on those average kids. If I can be honest, if most teachers were honest, you only have time to hit them average kids, because what you're looking for is growth. And if you're a great teacher, if you're a good teacher, you just want to grow them. Okay. Which is okay. But not only do I want to grow them, but I want them to achieve greatness. So I want to push them past growth. I need for them to be, what's the word for? I need for them to pass, right? I need for them to know all the content and not just grow. I mean, and growth could be, you went from, I don't know, if we put grades, say we put grades on it. I'm just going to use that as a hypothetical. Say you're an F student, right? You came in, you're in third grade and you don't know nothing. You're an F, right? Growth would be, now you're a D, right? If good, that's okay growth. Good growth would be, okay, now you're a C. But have you attained the ultimate level of achievement, which will be that AB level? No, you have not. But they'll be like, oh, yay, you grew them. So yay, hooray. Good for you, right? But if you're a child who's already an A level, your grade that you're in is already, you're already A level in that grade. The teacher won't have as much time to really nurture you to kind of put you probably in the next level, which would be maybe more rigorous courses, maybe having you visit if you're a third grader, having you visit the 4th grade, or giving you 4th grade content so that you're not bored and behind, right? And then for those EC kids, or those kids that are behind by 1 or 2 grade levels, you got to do so many interventions to get them caught up that you just don't have the time. So what's happening is, as these kids are going through each grade, teachers don't have the time. Okay, you have 25 kids, K through 3rd. 4th and up, there's no cap on your classroom. So you can literally have 41, 52 kids in your class, and no one bats an eye and be like, oh, work a miracle. All right, no. And they just want them to grow. Okay, that's the kind of words that they use. They just want them to grow. That's about it. And I just feel like if you just want them to grow, what does that look like? And is that really challenging them? If that makes any sense. Like, I need for majority of the kids for me personally, I need for you guys to show that you know all of this content, right? That you are not just growing, but you are showing what is it called? You are showing that you understand you understand the concepts, period. And you're passing, right? So I'm not looking for average work. I'm looking for above average work. And a lot of times that's not what's being displayed within the classroom because of time, because teachers' personalities. I'm not gonna lie, some teachers are lazy and they just want to kind of scoot on by with bare minimum. And then you have those once in a blue moon teachers who excel at their job, and they're like, no, growth is not enough for me. I need for you guys to make or exceed expectations. And that was me. I needed my kids to exceed expectations. I was not trying to be like, oh, because what happens is, what if they go to the next grade? They make growth. When they go to the next grade, they're super behind because they're in a C level and not at a BA level. So now they go right back into the next grade, the 4th grade, for example, and they're starting at F again because maybe and it's just like a whole cycle. So for me, I was like, no. Personalized instruction is so important, and not just personalized instruction to meet the standards or the concepts for, however old your child is, but also not just that, but also having the time to cater the learning to what they're interested in, kind of steering them into rigorous learning of different types of concepts outside the traditional framework of education. So for example, my kid was into coding or something, right? And he wanted to intertwine that with math, or I could figure out a way to intertwine that with math. I can do that in homeschool. But if he has that desire in school, they're not going to foster that most likely because there's just not enough time. And the teacher can only do so much, right? They already have such a high load anyway. So being able to be at home and foster a personalized instruction is so important to me. And it's the great thing is that your child changes throughout their whole entire, they're in school for what, 12, 13 years, honestly, if they start in pre-K, right? So they choose and they find different interests, things that motivate them to do, what's required of them, right? Which is reading, math, writing, right? But you can take those core courses or those curriculums, etc., and you can tweak it to, oh, my kid is into botany for whatever reason. Okay, so let's go ahead and, hey, can you write me a paper on botany, or can you do me a PowerPoint or something like that, right? Or create a display, a virtual or a 3D or an actual display of this concept, right? A lot of times they can't really do that or have the freedom to express those type of things. So for me, personalized instruction is so important because if they're average, cool, we can just stay on track, right? If they're a little behind on something, we can take the time to make sure that they get it and they get it to mastery, right? Whatever it is. If it takes them 2 weeks, cool. If it takes them a month, okay, yeah. If it takes 6 months, some things take 6 months to learn, depending on how complex it is. It's okay. We have the time, right? In school system, nope. They got to get it. If they get it, they get left behind. That's why our school system is broken. Or if they're advanced, it's too easy for me, mom. I already know this. Okay, cool. We're not going to waste our time. Let's go ahead and go to the next level, right? Instead of just being like, oh, bored and just doing other things. That happens so much. So if your child is, I really want you to think about this, especially if your child is EC or maybe a couple of grade levels behind. They should give you data on that. I'll kind of talk about that more in other videos. Or if your child is advanced, right? I feel like they definitely give them the short end of the stick if they're either or, right? So yes, and that was a long-winded one. But I hope you guys are finding this interesting. Oh, I forgot. My name is Miss Asia, of course. Welcome to my channel. And we're going to go ahead and get into the third thing here. Hope you guys are finding this valuable. Let me go ahead. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm over here. Okay, so the third thing kind of goes along with environment again. So the third thing is the negative environment and behaviors. Okay, this particular issue is the reason why a lot of teachers are throwing in the towel. Okay, And I feel like partly it can be put on the teacher. Some teachers do not have good classroom management, right? And then some teachers have such good classroom management that what happens is that one teacher gets all the behaviors and then that teacher deuces, right? Or the other teacher's like, oh, I can't handle this. This is not for me. Let me go ahead and put in my application for Dairy Queen, okay? That could be the issue too, right? But getting kids that have, okay, I'm gonna say this. The negative environment and behaviors in public school can drastically hinder learning. Okay, let's go ahead and get that out first. While diversity is often a good thing, it can be a good thing, you can learn from different people, a few disruptive students that have different backgrounds or different upbringings, we're talking about parenting styles, okay? We're talking about, wherever environment that conduces those high-risk behaviors or negative behaviors, all right? That could be anything, right? It could be gentle parenting to mom and daddy never home, I'm always at grandma's house. Okay, who knows, all right? So you intertwine that with kids that maybe have a more stable environment at the home, they're taught manners, et cetera, et cetera. And what happens is those few apples, those few kids that maybe have went through trauma or going through negative events, et cetera, they are subject to, the teacher's trying to give them a nice classroom environment, a healthy classroom environment. And what happens from there? Those few apples ruin the whole bunch. Y'all know what the saying is, right? So these kids, they talking out, being aggressive toward other kids, seeing kids throwing things, seeing kids just making fun of kids for no reason, right? We're over here trying to do our work, trying to be better, trying to have fun. And then they take those fun moments and ruin it for the whole class. So depending on your child, especially if you're depending on their emotional state, depending on if they have anxiety, ADHD, etc., these things can impact your child's emotional, social, mental well-being, spiritual well-being even, right? And it becomes a big problem. So these negative environments, some people are like, oh, that's how life is. But guys, some of these environments are so traumatic and so unhealthy, it's not even funny. I don't even know why people be like, oh, because if your workplace was how the classroom is, where people can just come into your workplace and be like, you looking crazy. You know what I'm saying? You know how some people are, how you have negative people in your workplace, but it only goes to a certain extent. We're talking about borderline emotional abuse type thing that happens to a lot of children from these kids from other behaviors. And you have children in that classroom who really want to learn, but they snatched away from them from kids who just don't have the skills or the background or the upbringing to behave themselves, right? And then what happens is, yes, there are behavior plans in place. Say the teacher has behavior plans in place. Okay? Say that that's in place. She's a great teacher, she's a great classroom management. She keeps them in check most of the time, right? But I did notice that, for example, when I was a teacher, I feel like my classroom management was on point. I didn't really have too many issues, too many problems besides maybe my first year because it's my first year, right? But after that, I wasn't playing. I was like, guys, we're here to learn. I'm here to teach you guys. The first month, we learned how to treat each other. We learned that, hey, we're a family here. We are a classroom family, okay? So you guys look out for each other. You guys be kind to each other. And after you have that established, then you can teach, right? But a whole month. It takes a whole month. For 20 kids, yes. It takes a whole month on average. But then, what would happen is, when they go to PE, the same kids, they're like, Miss Davis, they've been off the wall. It's like, what? And it just depends. It honestly depends. And kids know who they can try, and they know who they can't, right? That's just how it is. But it's just and then putting your child in that predicament when they're just there to learn, when they're just there to grow, when they're there to make friends. A lot of kids who go to school, public school, I know this is always a thing, oh, homeschoolers are not social, That's actually a myth. So I'm actually going to go into that on a different video. Watch out for that. But also, you're okay, you want your child to be socialized. When they go to socialize and they learn how to be rude. They learn how to curse each other out. You know what I'm saying? They learn how to fight. Is that better? I don't think so. Like, subjecting my child to violence versus just being home and having manners, because honestly, all the homeschoolers that I've come across, yes, of course, there's kind of quiet and weird people in both public and homeschool, but it's different because their mannerisms, they're more innocent, if that makes any sense. They're more mannerable. They can talk to, look you in the eye and say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, like converse, etc. But then you go to public school, no one wants to look you in the eye. They want to have an attitude. They want to talk to you crazy. So you got to be like, no, you don't say what to me. Say yes or yes, ma'am. You just got to teach other people, because some people they just don't teach their kids, I don't think, in the best way. So it's just a waste for me. So negative environment and behaviors. And then on top of that, so you have the problematic, the negative behavior children, okay? It depends on the school system as well. So if your school is backing you, that's amazing. But oftentimes what happens is you'll have a school system, or I'm going to say admin, that's the principal, assistant principal, counselor, all them people. They want to coddle these kids. So they're like, oh, just send them to the counselor's office. They get a little lollipop, a little behavior chart, and they're on their way, okay? And what they really need is to be suspended, right? What they really need is some ISS, okay? What they really need is, instead of going to a fun event, he needs to sit out, right? But instead, they're like, no, that's a little too harsh. And then you end up and then the child learns, it don't matter what I do, I can act up. It don't matter. So then, of course, everybody's conducive to that. And then what happens is they see that you're having a problem with this child, and guess what? Those children, which is about half the class, have about those following behavior tendencies, okay? These are children, so they learn from watching other children. They learn from you as a teacher, but unfortunately, they also learn from other kids. They're like, oh, he's wilding out. He's having an attitude. Let me wilding out and have an attitude. And I can put my finger on how many people were homeschooled. Yes, they were in my classroom. They were in public school, and they went to homeschool, especially after the pandemic, COVID. And they were so sweet and mannerable at the beginning of the school year. But then by the end, they started befriending, the class problem child. I'm going to say that. And all of a sudden, they got an attitude. And all of a sudden, they're cursing you out. And all of a sudden, it's crazy. Okay? So, no. My kids will not be subject to a negative environment and negative behaviors that they can either pick up on or they can be subjected to. It's just not worth it for me. Okay? So, that's number 3. I hope you guys are taking notes. No, I'm kidding. All right, so number 4. We're almost done. Remember, there's 5. 5 disturbing realities. Another disturbing reality is the lack of accountability and independence. Let me tell you for the people in the back. The lack of accountability and independence in the school system. We are... The public school system is creating coddled children. Okay? If they're not just being coddled enough at home, they're being coddled even more at school. Okay? So teachers are holding their hand, giving them 5 to 6 chances to turn things in. Right? Not being accountable. Some people are indoctrinating children to think that everything is someone else's fault and it's not their fault and things like that. Which sometimes it is not, right? But let's be real. Depending on what we're talking about, like for example, you have a student. They are, they're not the best at math. They're like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna put you in, this little intervention program, or case may be, to help you kind of catch up in math, right? You give them the work. You're like, okay, I need for you to do a couple of problems each night at home, just 2 to 3 problems at home, or however many problems at home, because because you're behind, you need to practice not only here, but you need to practice at home. Okay? And let's not even have that but homework conversation. Okay? I am pro homework, but I will explain that in, again, another video. So this child is behind, or case may be, and they just don't want to do the work at home, and then they come to school and they're not doing it at school either. Right? And you're like, hey, I need for you to put in some effort. They're not trying to put in effort. They're like, this is too hard. They give up, right? Mentally, or a case may be. Okay? And let's just assume that they don't have any other emotional or learning disabilities. Okay? It's an effort thing. It's a motivation thing. So you're like, okay, bet. So you give them the grade that they're supposed to get, and you just move on. You're like, hey, I can't force you to learn, so that it is what it is. That's what they should be getting. But instead, they're like, oh, let's give you another chance, or let's try to, and they're kind of begging these students, and you shouldn't have to beg a student to do that. That type of stuff you have to teach. the behaviors you have to teach, growth mindset, right? Learning that you are the dictator of your future, right? So what's happening is, in the school system, that's what we're doing, okay? We have a lot of coddler teachers giving kids too many chances. And not only just that, but, you know, one thing that I made sure, even my kids were in 3rd grade, I didn't care. I was like, look, if you're going to get anything from this class, you're going to get a good hard work ethic. That's number one, because we don't play in this class, okay? We over here to change lives, okay? So having a good hard work ethic, and then not only just that, but being independent. So being accountable, being responsible, taking care of your things, turning in your work on time, not having to have your teacher over your shoulder every 5 seconds to complete your work. That is a character building problem, and a lot of times that's not being taught in the classroom, which is why we have people in middle school and high school just trailing along, and then what's happening is these professors are just giving them passing grades just to get them out of their face, right? That is not what we need for our kids to do, right? So also, let me add this in as well. This is really personal to me as well, because I personally saw growing up the difference between public school and homeschool. Why? I am a 2nd generation schooler. Okay? No, I'm not. This is not my first rodeo. Okay? Yes. I was homeschooled all of high school. All right? I've been into every type of school system you can think of. Private, public, and homeschool. And even as an adult, I can say homeschool was my favorite. Okay? And I can go into that if y'all would like. Just comment, hey, like, how was homeschool for you? And da-da-da. But I feel like homeschool is really what taught me how to be a success in life. How to set goals and achieve them no matter what, without anybody holding my hand. Okay? So how my mom did was, she taught me as in like sat in front of me, taught me, and kind of walked me through everything from 9th to 10th grade, okay, as far as the concepts. Then 11th through 12th, I was self-taught for the most part. Now, my mom probably did check my work, or whatever case may be, and just made sure that I was on the right track. But I was very self-motivated. I was very much self-taught. So if I was interested in something, I would learn about it, right? I would write papers on it. I would find different things, different ways to show that information. I was really into, like, I thought I was going to be a physician assistant. So I was really into, like, anatomy, physiology, medicine. So I would always do, like, little papers on that and do little projects on it, etc. Then, once I was done with school and I was about to go into early college, I was like, hey, I ain't got nothing else to do. Let me go ahead and start doing my mom's college books that I find interesting. So I started doing that. All of that was because my mom instilled independence in me, right? If I wanted something, I had to work for it, right? And not only with that, but just in general. So at my job, getting money, things like that. My parents definitely instill hard work ethic in me and self-discipline. Now, that should already be established anyway. If you're a good parent, that should be something that you should strive for your child to know. So then you know that your child is good. If something were to happen to you, or, as they're growing up, or a case may be, they can take care of themselves. But that lack of independence, and then you depending on someone else and being dependent on whoever that may be, whether that be a person, government entity, whatever, you're setting your child up for failure, okay? And that's unfortunately, that's what the public school system does. It most of the time, I'm not gonna say for all, but a lot of the kids are coddled through the whole system. They don't understand what hard work is. They don't understand what it means to earn a grade or earn, privilege, or whatever case may be. So we have these problems and these issues. And then when they get out and they get into college, they're like, woe is me, and it's the whole thing. And anyway, so comparing myself, as soon as I got to early college, I did befriend public school kids, right? And guess what? None of them knew I was homeschooled, so I told them. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I was homeschooled, and no one knew I was homeschooled. They were like, you're homeschooled? What? Because they were shocked because I was very social and I could, like, articulate myself. I could communicate, etc., etc. They were shocked. But I did notice a big difference between the friends that I did, or maybe it's just the friends that I chose also. Like, that was something that I probably could have done a little bit better at. But I did notice that some of my public school friends, who used to be like, oh, you're homeschooled, da-da-da. Like, their work ethic in college was beating them down, okay? So much so that some of them had to pay back grant money. Some of them had to retake classes. Easy classes at that, like ACA, which is just college prep. Like, all you have to do is do the work and easy A. But people were failing at that. Okay, it could be motivation, but I feel like a lot of that was because they weren't taught how to be independent and how to be self-motivated and taking accountability for where you want to be in life, right? So I'll just say that. That's just my personal peeve there. But yes, that is the reason I chose to homeschool. I chose to homeschool so my kids would develop that valuable skill and become true, lifelong, self-motivated learners. That's why. Okay? Because it's a hit or miss in the public school system. And if they're getting any of it, it's very little. All right, last but not least, we are on our last little thing here of disturbing realities in the public school system that led me to homeschooling. And I call this the LLC effect. Okay, the LLC. Okay? The first L is lack of life skills. The second L is lack of leadership. And the third, and the C is for lack of critical thinking. Okay, I kind of just put all these in one. I didn't want it to be like 8 different things, so I kind of just put them all together. But of course, we're going to talk about first life skills. Okay, the lack of life skills in the public school system. So when you scroll through social media, I often see people saying they learned a little in school, and that they could so they learned a little bit in school, and a lot of stuff that they learned in school they can't apply in real life. Okay, I hear this all the time from parents, teachers, everybody. Everybody went to school. They're like, okay, I did all this work, but what do I do now? I'm in life and I'm struggling over here. I don't even know how everything works, right? Don't even know what a credit score is. Don't know how to keep a good credit score. Don't know how to understand like deposits when you rent a house, and keeping your this is a life skill too. Keeping your area clean, keeping your house clean, right? And organized so that you can have a functional, healthy lifestyle, etc. Right? So that lack of life skills is one of the reasons why I decided to homeschool. It is very valuable that you not only teach, what they want your children to know if they're interested in college, because technically that's what we're teaching them for, but also it's really important for a child to know how to read, do math, etc. But it's even just as important that they know how to be a good, decent human being in character, and also in how to take care of themselves and other people, right? Especially if they, want to become a mother, a father one day, etc. Life skills is going to take them a long way. Career choices, things like that. So if they honestly, you don't really care about real life skills really until probably maybe if it is in public school, maybe like high school, whatever. They might dibble and dabble in it in social studies for like a month or a couple of weeks or whatever, and they talk about like wants and needs, but they don't really go in depth. Okay, they don't tell you about an APR rate. Okay, they're not going to tell you about how the stock market works, right? So all these different life skills that can help kids make a better decision is obsolete. All right. It seems like, especially from the books I'm reading, and I'll share with those again. I'll share that in a different video. I know I keep saying that, but I'll share that as well. What I'm learning in those books. But it's almost like it was set up that way. Like there's like this public school system is set up for your kids to just think that the only avenue for a career is college. Okay. Am I anti-college? No, not by any means. If you have done the research and you feel like the return on investment for a college education is worth it for you, and you are passionate about that, girl, boy, do what you got to do. All right. However, how many other options are really presented to the average student in the public school system? Especially if they lack basic skills like reading, which is going to get you anywhere, right? If you can't read, you can't learn. So the fact that our reading statistics for America, it makes me sick, right? Honestly, it should make everybody else sick. It should be a crisis. Instead of us talking about all this other stuff on the news, we should be talking about that reading rate, because not being able to read is one of the reasons why our society is the way that it is, and why it has such low standards, right? But of course we can't be perfect. We're not living in a perfect world, but I feel like that's part of the issue. Our values are in entertainment and not in education, right? Honestly, entertainment, you can make money off of it. Cool. But at what cost? Education, though, it's like, other countries, they value education, but they have other issues going on. But anyway, I digress. So with the life skills point that I was trying to, what I'm talking about is, it becomes so difficult for the average person who went through the public school system to have those life skills, right? And you don't really learn them until you're like older, like in high school, maybe about to leave work, because maybe you might get to dip and dab. But I feel like for it to really be successful and for more kids to really be set up for success, they need to be shown, or life skills needs to be a part of kindergarten through 12, K through 12, okay? There should be a whole, I'm not saying but we have music as for, they call them specials or encores. We have music, art, PE, maybe Spanish or a foreign language, and maybe computers, something like that, right? Instead of computers, or even to add another one, you know which one I think this should be added in there is life skills, okay? How to communicate with someone who is maybe you're higher up, like an employee, how to get along with people that you work with, build relationships, network, what is a credit score, how, different things like that, especially when it aligns with the math or the reading skills that certain grade levels have. I feel like that would be a perfect time to integrate things like that. Life skills, organizing your area. Okay, if you want to be a home, figuring out, hey, pick a job this year or something like that. I'm just making this up, but pick a job this year, right? Pick a career. Tell me how much it would take for you to go to college, right? For this career, and how much money you'll get paid. And if you took out a loan, how much money, depending on the interest rate, would you have to pay before you could be debt free and then finally live financially free? You know what I'm saying? They don't do that. Okay. And that kind of goes along to my next point. We're literally in a life skill cycle, right? It's as if it is set up that way, right? While I agree that parents have a role to play in life skills, the lack of practical education can lead people to make unwise choices, like signing up for high interest loans because they are not financially literate. It's a problem, and I prefer to teach these principles to my kids regularly from kindergarten through high school. Kidding. All right, so anyway, so we were just going over the first L, which was life skills, the lack of life skills in the public school system. It's a problem, it's an issue. It needs to be addressed. And I will be talking about that on this channel as well, on how you can integrate life skills, whether your child goes to public school or homeschool, and set them up to be a successful adult. Number second is leadership, okay? We live in a society of followers, okay? On TikTok, literally, if someone likes your content, they follow you, right? You have, of course, you have subscribers, followers, whatever, right? And then the person who you're following, depending on how many followers they have, right? 25,000, 25 million, I don't know. They're called influencers. Okay? The public school system, I believe, is created in a way that produces followers. Okay? The fact that they don't really talk about other avenues besides college, I think kind of speaks for itself and shows that, hey, fall in line. Okay, our parents thought that way, we thought that way, and then when we got there, we're like, this wasn't really a good idea for my pockets. Okay, so being a follower is not a good thing. All right, I want my kids, as I'm homeschooling them, to be leaders, to have leadership qualities, to have qualities that where they don't have to fit in with other people, right? They don't have to follow along what other people are doing and be peer pressured to do other stuff, right? Building up kids to think for themselves and to make their own decisions because that's what they want to do, right? And to have these leadership qualities to be able to help someone else and bring them along on their journey of being a successful adult, right? So we live in a society of followers. On social media, your worth is measured by how many followers you have. And if you have a lot, you're considered a leader. Okay? But half the time, if you guys notice, for the influencers or the followers, you can have a terrible behavior, right? You can have atrocious attitude, okay? You can be a vile person and still have a bunch of followers and be an influencer, right? So we have the wrong people a lot of time. I'm gonna say a lot, but we have the wrong people that are in leadership, right? And of course, in high school and middle school, you definitely see this with the different societal things that happen within the framework of a middle school, right? So you got, typical, if y'all know, from the 90s or early 2000s or whatever, you got the popular girl. She's the leader, da-da-da. She could be dumb as a bag of rocks, but we were still like, we want to be like you. We want to do what you do, da-da-da-da. And then before you know, you follow that person and your life's messed up, right? So teaching your kids to have those leadership qualities, and this philosophy often leads many people to, like I said, sometimes ruin your life, sometimes go through traumatic experiences, thinking that, oh, I'm just going to follow the crowd. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do that. You know what I'm saying? Not thinking for yourself, right? And that leads a lot of kids, especially, I would say this is definitely holds true to middle school and high school, because I feel like because your brain is still not fully developed, those are the times, and you're trying to fit in, you're trying to be like everybody else, etc. It can make or break you during your young adult life. And I think high school trauma, middle school trauma, that's a real thing, and it can affect you even as an adult. So I just feel like it's just not worth it. And I prefer to teach those leadership skills that my kids need to know: how to speak to people, how to have a moral code, how to show character, right? How to be a hard worker and then influence other people to do the right thing, right? So that is another thing. So we have LLC, lack of life skills, lack of leadership. And then last but not least, C is a lack of critical thinking. Okay, this is a big one. This is the pow-pow, okay? This is the boom-boom, all right? So, excuse me, y'all. I'm kind of getting excited about this one. But, yes, the lack of critical thinking is also a big thing, all right? It kind of goes along with the follower mentality, but not being able to critically think about information that's being shown to you, especially in the age of technology. We just assume that whatever the information from the news to social media posts to whatever is true. Okay, how many times have we listened to a news article and we're like, you know what, let me go ahead and fact check and let me go ahead and do my own research on that because I don't really know, right? Or you find yourself upset about a certain ideal, about who knows, who, just pick a topic and you just be like, someone presents a different idea and you get angry, right? You'd be like, why does this person think that way? That's not normal. And most of the time, it's probably because you're probably around people that don't think like you, which, that's how we are as people. But stay with me. So how many times have you looked at a news article? They're saying, da-da-da, this is just whatever it says. Let's just say aliens are visiting Miami. Right? I think that was one. I think it was like they're saying someone saw aliens in Miami just walking around, right? You know how many people believe that? I still don't believe it. I'm sorry. I don't believe it. But how many people actually fact checked all the evidence? Because even if you look at the videos, there's no real videos with the aliens. Like with all those people, we talking about people always have their phone out. They're quick to have their phone out for someone falling down the stairs or catching a cat bounce a ball off the wall or whatever. But we have this big alien in the middle of Miami. I think that's what it was. And all of a sudden, there's no evidence. There's no real video evidence of no close-ups. It's all from far away. It's all kind of distorted, right? So it's just kind of like, just things like that. Like people really don't think things through. It's the lack of critical thinking skills. It's the lack of, you know what, let me go ahead and fact check this. Let me go ahead and do my due diligence and know what sources are hearsay. And that can be distorted, Wikipedia, things like that. Or let me go ahead and do my due diligence and know, hey, maybe I need to look at a peer-reviewed source for this particular topic because, I'm hearing a lot of crazy stuff and it just sounds like, it sounds suspicious to me. So we just be like, oh wow. And then we go ahead and tell our friends and we tell this other person, then we have an idea about it. Didn't read a book about it. Didn't do our due diligence. Didn't fact check nothing. Right? So creating an environment in the homeschool environment of critical thinkers is critical. Okay. This is going to set them up from staying away from foolishness, staying away from lies, especially when we talk about like biblical principles and like how to interpret the Bible and things like that. Like critical thinking is a big thing, a part of that. Like apologists, we call it apologetics. My bad. But even outside of that, even outside of spiritual growth and biblical principles, critical thinking can definitely help you in life, right? It can definitely put you in a place of success and advancement and things like that. Being an asset to your family, being an asset to your friend group, because you're the one that actually reads books. You're the one that actually thinks things through. You're the one that actually hones into these skills. Critical thinking, the ability to reason, display ideas, and challenge the status quo is often neglected in the public school system. So fostering that skill is vital in my household. Okay? So, but that was just my thing, the LLC, the lack of, like I said, the lack of life skills, leadership, and critical thinking, they're all missing. So that's another reason why I am homeschooling my children. They are important. And I'll also, again, be talking about all these in depth on how you can, if you aren't doing that, you're like, oh, I do that. You know, this is a good time to reflect. I kind of do it sometimes too. I'm like, my mom will say something to me and I'm like, let me look that up. You know what I'm saying? And not just look that up, not just Google chat it. Sorry, that was my gum. Not just Google chat it, but really look it up. Like maybe download an Audible about it on like a researcher who's like an expert on it. Or like I said, go to peer-reviewed articles, make sure that it's true, right? Because you'd be surprised how many things that you think are true are actually lies, right? So anyway, so I hope some of these points resonate with you and helped you gain clarity about your own children's education. If there's anything that you find disturbing on why you homeschooled your kids, or maybe you're on the other side, maybe you're like, you know, some of these ideas that you're bringing up are not valid, and I don't think that that's a reason for you to pull your public school kids out. Whatever you think, go ahead and drop it in the description. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are there any reasons you're homeschooling your kids, or do you have any other thoughts? I'd love to hear from you. Also, please like and subscribe, and you will be notified anytime I drop a video. God bless. Keep learning. Miss Asia, the educator, is signing out. Bye-bye.